Well, family and friends of Israeli hostages who are out protesting today, calling for their government to approve the ceasefire deal negotiators reached yesterday to end the war in Gaza.
We're very, very tired. It's very hard days to hold it. We're broken, and we really hope that the deal will sign soon.
Israel delayed holding a cabinet meeting to ratify the ceasefire, with Hamas blaming the militant group for the holdup. If it is approved, the first phase of the agreement is expected to begin Sunday. Meanwhile, Israeli warplanes pounded Gaza in some of the most intense strikes in months. Palestinian authorities said at least 77 people were killed in the day since the truce was unveiled. So big questions in terms of what to expect next as negotiations continue. For analysis, Aaron David Miller joins me now. He's in Washington, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a former U.S. State Department Middle East negotiator. Aaron, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thanks for having me.
I want to get your first impression here over what we've seen over the last 24 hours in terms of us talking about this potentially historic ceasefire deal, a three-phase deal, to what we're hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu and no vote happening in the cabinet as of yet.
Yeah, I mean, overriding everything is the one factor that has delayed this deal over the last 6 to 8 months, and that is Israeli domestic politics. The Prime Minister of Israel presides over the most right-wing government in Israel's history. One of his ministers, who holds 6 seats in the Israeli Knesset and is key supporter, has threatened basically to resign and pull out from the government if the cabinet, which is due to meet, by the way, the Security Cabinet tomorrow, the full cabinet Saturday night. And I wouldn't expect any hostage release to Monday, which is perhaps not coincidentally inauguration day of a new president, Donald Trump. It is domestic politics that is driving this on the Israeli side. Not that Hamas doesn't present as a designated terror organization innumerable problems here. But Mr. Netanyahu delayed in large part because his own politics are not in order. And the government probably will be able to pass this three-phase agreement and maybe get through phase one. But when it comes to phase two, which is the end of war, release all the hostages, and withdraw Israeli forces from Gaza, I do not believe that this Israeli government is capable of making a decision. So you might end up looking at new elections.
You mentioned there the United States. You mentioned that we could get into sort of phase one. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he's confident that things will sort of still come into effect come Sunday. I'm gathering from you that things may not be as plain and simple as perhaps they're hoping there to be. I want to bring Donald Trump into this conversation as well. As you mentioned, perhaps things may not happen until Monday, same day as inauguration. Talk to me about the Trump factor in all of this.
I mean, the Trump factor, I think, was very important. You have to ask yourself why. This deal could have been done 5 months ago. Why is it happening now? Basically, I think for 3 reasons. Number one, Hamas is much weaker, and there's nothing to show for the last 15 months other than visiting, courtesy of the Israelis who are prosecuting a war against Hamas, death and destruction on the people of Gaza. Hamas needs something. That's number one. Number two, Netanyahu is strong enough, he believes, in order to sign an agreement that at least would get you through phase one. But without the onset of the Trump administration, without the unpredictability that Trump poses for Netanyahu, I'm not sure this would be happening. Benjamin Netanyahu has successfully, and his counterpart, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, who the Israelis killed, the organization is now led by his brother Mohammed. Both Netanyahu and Sinwar, I think, manipulated Joe Biden over the last 5 or 6 months. I think Netanyahu draws the conclusion that he cannot afford to be a problem for Donald Trump. He doesn't know where Trump is going to be on the Israel issue, whether it comes to Iran or annexation of the West Bank. So I think he decided to give Trump a pre-inaugural win. And that's, it seems to me, what's driving, the key factor that's driving this as to why we're on the cusp of reaching an agreement.
And with that being said, when we talk about the hostages who so many families are waiting for them to come home, to hear more about them, if we are able to get to this phase one, do you then anticipate then the hard push from Donald Trump and his administration to Netanyahu, of course, to Hamas as well, to say this has to get done, not just phase one, but straight through until phase three, and we say it's all said and done? What are you watching for then?
That's the key question.
Yeah.
And right now, the objectives of Hamas and Israel in phase two are mutually exclusive. Hamas will release all the prisoners that remain, live and dead Israeli soldiers, if Israel calls an end to the war and withdraws its forces. No Israeli government, not this one, not one headed by a centrist or even a left of center government, can withdraw from Gaza without some assurance that there would be some security force to prevent Hamas from resurging. And that is the key issue here. It's inconvenient to admit it, but Hamas is going to survive. It will not be able to govern Gaza, but through intimidation, co-optation, the absence of legitimacy of other Palestinian actors, Hamas will be able to influence the course of events. So Netanyahu is determined to deny Hamas that victory. And that is where it gets extremely complicated. Whether Donald Trump, the most pro-Israeli president, he fashions himself in the history of the universe, is prepared to be tough with Netanyahu remains to be seen.
We'll be watching it very closely. Really appreciate getting your analysis on this. Aaron David Miller, a former U.S. State Department Middle East negotiator and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, joining us from Washington. Thank you again for this, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.